God help us. Metal Gear is moving.
Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cosplay Oddities. Today we're going to be looking at something a little bit differently. We're going to be looking at the Kotobukiya Metal Gear series. All three of them, even though there are a couple other ones. But we're just going to be focusing on these three lovelies right here. Woo, let's get started. And first up on the block, we have the man, the grandfather. Technically, he would be the, fourth one down the line, or fifth one down the line? But who cares? A lot of people think of this as their first Metal Gear Rex. Oh yeah, look at this bad boy right here. Now, the reason why I'm starting with this one is because, I mean, for a lot of people, this was their first Metal Gear. And his design is, fantastic. I mean, he comes off as a T-Rex. Jurassic Park was probably a couple years after the fact, and I think maybe Jurassic Park 2 is coming out. T-Rexes were everywhere. Were at this point in the 90s. I mean, I had like games like Tomb Raider that was in, movies. Everybody was in love with the T-Rex, and Metal Gear delivered on a variant of their own. And now, there are some things I want to talk about with this model, but at first I want to mention the price point. This is probably the best detailed Metal Gear you're going to get at a price. There is two toys that have light-up features on them, and if you're not too crazy about it, after putting this together, I think you could put some lights in this Metal Gear if you wanted to. There are people who do put lights in model kits. You only have to look at like Starship Enterprises to see examples of that, where people have jammed lights into those and LED lights and whatnot. And they make lights very, very small these days. And even though, let's do the comparison here, of my hand next to this thing, he's not very big, but like I was saying, there was two toy variants that came out with this design, and both of them are going to cost you a small fortune just to have a Metal Gear Rex. And the size of which, I mean, it's cool, it's impressive, but at the same time you have to remember there's a lot of shelf space. And this guy is very well detailed. You have the option to paint him any way you want. And he's not going to take up a lot of space on your shelf. So, I feel like this is, like, all intents and purposes, this is the best Metal Gear you can get for the money. He's not exactly cheap, because the company that made him is a Japanese company, and Japanese import. There's not a lot of model shops in the US that sell it, and they're not going to sell it cheap either. So you're looking at maybe $100, easy, maybe $200, because from what I understand, this model company, again, name on the bottom of the screen, don't necessarily re-release their model kits all the time. Now, there's a black version of this one, but as I see, like, me personally, painting models is part of the fun of building models. So black, I mean, you can just buy this version and paint it any color you want. If you want a black version, you can just paint it black. So I don't really know what they're going for with that. And there's also a Metal Gear Solid 4 version of this same model where it has some details that are a little bit different than this one, mostly with like armor coming off and whatnot. But again, you could just buy this one and make those alterations yourself if you felt like doing that. You don't have to get that one. But if you're a completionist, I can understand wanting to go out and buy those. With that being said, and all the beauty shots that we're playing over this, let's give you a little bit more of a rundown on this model. So, as you can see, he can move around. And if you're not familiar with Japanese models, a lot of Japanese models can move around. It's a really cool feature that a lot of them have. And it gives you posability where you wouldn't have normally. But with that being said, there's a lot of things I have to address on this. His railgun is now permanently on him. I'm even scared to move it around. The ball joint that attached to this railgun just, I don't know if it was friction or whatnot, just came completely off. I glued the ball joint back on and I gently pressed it back in and I glued the whole thing together. So now I'm sure the railgun can move up and down. I really don't want to risk it. But, and his feet, I accidentally, pay attention to your manuals, people. Knows where the tabs are, because I just cut the tabs right off his feet, and now his feet do not move. They're glued down. In the normal model, these toes could go up and down. Mine does not. But let me show you some features. His head opens. There's a cockpit inside. This did come with figures to scale, as you can see right there. And you can paint those and you can place them on your Metal Gear. I believe there was a Snake, Solid, and 2 variants on Gray Fox. Now, with all that being said, he does move around in all kinds of various ways. My foot never stayed on properly, so we're just going to take that right off to show you some of his moving features. Oh. And those are the infamous ball joints I was talking about earlier. But this is okay. Because, as he does all kinds of neat features where you can have him pose in any way you want. And let me just show off some of this detail while I got it up like this. Now here I can give you a little bit close-up of how the feet joints go together. You're supposed to slack in there like that. Mine, for some reason, doesn't want to stay in its home. I don't know why that is. But as it is, the feet can pretty much stand pretty good on their own. You got some good balance there. And, they all slide in. I would strongly suggest keeping that bad boy out like that. These things also open up as well as up here as well. And it has all the missile pods. And I've never opened them, and I really don't feel like opening them because he is a bit fragile. And here's a close-up look at my railgun here, and like I said, this was the ball joint part that fell out when I was putting it together, and I glued it in, and it used to be able to rotate around, and now it doesn't. And they do give you a replacement card kit that you can order for them on. Whole thing's in Japanese. And I don't even know if they do exports. So if anybody knows how to translate that stuff, hey, get back to me. That'd be great. I'd love to know. So. Alright, right now we're looking at the second Metal Gear that people are mostly introduced to, tricked in that game, if you will. We are looking at the other model in that same model set, Metal Gear Ray. Now, Ray is to scale with Rex, and if you remember in, I think, the second game, it was stated that because of the incidents at Shadow Moses, the plans for Metal Gear were released to the public, and other countries were making their own variant on Metal Gear Rex. And I think you see that a little bit of that in Metal Gear 4 with the Geckos, where they were really Rex-like, but they had been upgraded since the events of that game. And I think it's supposed to be stated that in the course of Metal Gear, there were a bunch of Rexes running around, causing a lot of problems for people. And the solution to that was to just make more Metal Gears. So Ray was designed to be a Metal Gear killer. Now, if you did play 2 and you played 4, I don't know the real logic behind that, because it did seem like Ray was a little bit weaker than the Rex was. But that's regardless to this video. Now, as it stands, I don't think there is any Ray toy like there is with the Metal Gear Rex. I could be wrong. I mean, a lot of us don't really go looking for Ray toys. I think there might be one. I'm not 100% on that one. But this is the Ray that came out with that model set, and I think it was for Metal Gear 4, what this one is supposed to be based off of. Which, to me, is a little sad, because, honestly, if you look on this guy, he doesn't have a tail. And I clearly remember Metal Gear Ray in the second game having a tail, though I do know that for a fact that in Metal Gear 4 he did not have the tail anymore. And I don't know if that was just an upgraded feature or if it was just something they took off. I don't know the logic behind that one, but for whatever reason they took away his tail. And I think in the long run, a tail on a Ray, because he's supposed to be an amphibious Metal Gear, would help him swim. But at the same time, these are all bipedal tanks, and a tail, sweet, take the legs right out that guy easily. Regardless, this is the Metal Gear Ray. Now all of these have a paint scheme that come in their respective booklets, and I'll show that right here. And they asked for a very shiny look to it that I think you can only properly achieve with a airbrush gun, and then a lot of model makers, especially ones I want to get into model making, probably don't have that kind of painting ability or that kind of painting access to them right away. In fact, I think airbrushing is probably something you'd have to get more and more into along the line than you would just right off the bat, especially when you're spending on a $100 model kit like this one. And again, yes, this one is he's the cheapest one out of the line, but he's going to cost you a little bit more money too. And there might just be because they made a lot of them and he's not a very popular Metal Gear. Though, I will say, putting this together actually got me a little bit more excited about Ray in ways I didn't think I'd be possibly to be excited for. So, I don't know, I just got a little bit more appreciation for him at the end. When I got done making him, I was like, yeah, you know what, this thing could probably take on a Rex, and he probably would whoop its ass. So, let's look at some of the features here. Now, just like all of them Japanese models, they're actually really posable, and unfortunately for the Ray having the stubby legs that he has, he stands up very well with his stand. Now, the glaring points I will point out with this one, like the Rex where the ball joint popped off, I think they kind of knew that because they made some improvements on this one. And they gave you a decal sheet, but my decals are already kind of flaking off, and maybe I should go over it with another sealer. I don't know. It's been a while since I put decals together, but I think it kind of gives it character with the roughness of the Ray, if you will. Now, like I said, he does have features. He does move around. His arms come completely off. But that's okay, because I can kind of demonstrate some of the features here as the camera blurs completely out on me. But he goes back together pretty fairly well. And the one thing one of the things I love about this Outer Heaven. Oh, he's got it on his arms. Another cool feature about the Ray is his flexibility. For a model set, this was amazing to me. I get to come with the stand. They all come with a little stand of their own. Ray's is a little bit more focused on the Metal Gear 2 aspect of... Okay, and so that's another look at Ray. One of the glaring things I would probably point out is the decals do seem to be flaking off quite regularly. And again, that just might be my bad mistake. Other than that, he is structurally put together pretty well, all things considered. The only thing I would say was very glaring about this one, and it's a feature that the Rex has, and even Sahelanthropus has, is their heads open up. Ray doesn't have that feature, and I don't know if it was just because they couldn't think of how to do it, because it looks like there was an attempt to have it done, but whatever reason they couldn't get the mouth to open up, and so they gave you pieces to clip on there and open the mouth. But if you've already had this model, you kind of know how fragile it is and how you don't really want to do that. So my bright idea was, I don't know why they didn't think of this. Why didn't they just give us 2 head alternates? So we didn't have to swap pieces out. We could just swap heads, because his head comes off pretty good. I mean, all the pieces come off and on pretty well on this one. And I didn't have the same ball joint issue like I did with the Rex. I think that would have been a lot better solution to that. And if you got the money, I'd almost tell you to buy 2 Rexes just to have 2 different heads so you can swap them out how you want accordingly. But then you'd have 2 Rex bodies. Maybe that's not a bad solution either. I don't know. But overall, I do recommend Ray. If you're going to get Metal Gear Rex, you might as well get Metal Gear Ray, because they're just going to look awesome together. Like you're some kind of Russian scientist who has them on their desk. Who knows? And last and not certainly least, the man himself, the granddaddy of them all, Sahelanthropus from Metal Gear 5. This whopping bad boy measures in he stands he's pretty tall. Because of his height and because of his stand, he does not like to stand up straight. He absolutely will, if you balance him rightly. If you balance him, he will stand up straight if you balance him correctly. Mine likes to be a little fart and does not like to cooperate. With that being said, he is a solid model. I mean, every mistake that was made in the other ones was corrected with Sahelanthropus. He does not come apart. He does not have any messed up pieces. He is very, very solid. With that being said, he does not like to stand up straight. He has transformer modes that he can transform into, and you might notice that my Sahelanthropus has a red arm. It's not correct to the paint scheme at all. The idea is he just smooshed somebody and the blood ran up his arm, or he's using his power, blah, 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 blah. I kind of gave it a splattered blood effect. It's more an homage to the game he came from, Metal Gear 5. Not following the proper paint schemes at all. He can do all of the things that the other Metal Gears can do, and I'll demonstrate that here in a moment. So, now I got a firm grip of him in my hands. His legs probably will fall off, because he does not like to behave. He's a bad, bad Metal Gear, and he doesn't listen to his owner at all. Here's his railgun that just fell off for whatever reason. It is bigger than Rex's, and I don't know if it was able to shoot nukes, but it almost encompasses his whole body, just how tall he is. And, geez, the railgun's even taller than Rex. I mean, almost everything moves on him, which makes him a very want-to-fall-apart model. His mouth opens up, and you can reveal a cockpit inside. That closes back up. His swords come out, and it did come with a sword variant, so you could do that. All these grenades come out. I don't want to demonstrate that because they're a pain to get back in. His arms move up and down. His cannon thing moves up and down. Drill. It is sharp. Make no mistakes. His shield. Whoop. 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 His shield moves up and down. I did paint that correctly. It's got a darker navy blue than it requested, but when I got to it, it just said, oh yeah, I'm just going to use that because I like the color. His penis gun, and let's not mince words, it's totally a penis, moves up and down, whether it's shooting bad guys or just seeing quiet on the field, I'm not sure. The feet move up and down. I didn't screw these up, but they do like to fall out, so we're not going to touch those. And overall, he is a solid model that likes to fall apart, but he doesn't fall apart in the ways of breaking. He doesn't fall apart in the ways of breaking. He falls apart because he's very heavy. And it's the only way they could have done it, honestly. But, I mean, he's still very solid. He's not going to break. He just doesn't want to stand up. But he will stand up. He is very centered. It's just, with all these moving joints and being connected with ball joints and whatnot, he does tend to want to fall over. And then when he falls over, everything falls apart. So, and that was my look at the Metal Gear kotobukiya model sets. You can get these fairly easy on eBay. You can probably look in other places. I'm not really 100% where else to look, so I can't really guide you in that direction. But overall, I would say they're very good model sets. I would just be a little bit careful when putting them together. They're not very hard to put together if you just follow the instructions. Just my little mistakes here and there. But they are model kits, so if you make a mistake, it's not really 100% hard to fix that mistake. With that being said, thanks for watching, and please stay tuned for the next Cosplay Oddities that will be coming out sooner than this video did. So thank you very much for tuning in, and stay tuned.